Hello and welcome to the Business Tech Insights podcast. I'm your host, Brad Nelson, and today I am joined by Karina Muller. Karina, could you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure. Thank you for having me, first of all. I'm really excited to be here. So, I have a company called Mariposa Wellness, and it's an educational company around stress management, wellness, mental health, and what I call essential skills, which are a lot of the professional skills on communication and how we respond and how we react to things. So it's been around, I can't believe it, but 15 years at this point.
Oh,
So
wow.
super exciting.
Very cool. So over the 15 years, what have you learned about business and wellness?
Business wise, don't be an entrepreneur unless you have a really strong stomach for it. I know it's super sexy for a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I'm going to be like, you know, Mark Zuckerberg or whomever. Um, Not for everybody. I've sat on many panels, Brad, for like, students and business school students and things like that. And I'm like, please don't do this if you're not ready to like suffer through it. It's great. It's amazing. There's amazing parts to it, but it's also like, you know, uh, a difficult journey at times. So you have to be ready for it. In terms of the health and wellness, it's been really interesting to see the shift and the changes when I created Mariposa Wellness and started it. And I brought it into corporate wellness, which is where I started, of employees of hospitals and corporations. Um, Most of the corporate wellness that was being done at that time was like smoking cessation or let's
Hmm.
start walking or, you know, um, and then came the whole idea of like wearables and all of that. And so now it's evolved a lot and now everyone has an app and it's, grown tremendously. But when I started it, it was really a new concept to offer this kind of wellness to employees, right? It was also like very conservative and there wasn't a lot of thought process in what is our employee benefits beyond the traditional medical benefits, what other benefits can we offer? And then, of course, we've seen it explode, which is also really exciting, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I like what you said about entrepreneurship. It's definitely not for everybody. But it's also one of those things, just like anything in life, with high risk comes high reward, but high risk is high risk. So, and then with what, who do you mainly work with? Are you working with people trying to, you said employees. Do you offer um, your education materials and stuff to other businesses, or how does that work exactly?
So primarily I offer to through the business. So the business contracts me as a vendor in health and wellness, and then my services are offered to the employees. When I first conceived Mariposa Wellness, I thought I want to do mostly one-on-one trainings and one-on-one sessions. And then I realized I can reach a much wider audience if I'm doing group things. And also, not to be totally cliche, but like I tend to joke that like I can't afford me privately. So,
Yeah.
if I can offer it to a lot of people and really impact people that maybe can't afford this or don't have access to the educational part of this or don't know about it but are super interested, if it's coming as a benefit from their company or the hospital, then they can participate and have access to it. So that's why I moved very much into the group training and group sessions. And so it doesn't cost the employees anything, it costs the company as a service for the employees.
It also probably makes your job easier too, doing the groups instead of a ton of one-on-ones.
Yeah, I mean, I still continue to do some private sessions and one-on-ones. Very particular about that in terms of it has to be to really where I really feel like I can support a specific issue that that person is going through and it's a recommendation um and I love it, but you're right. Like there is something about the group that I really love and the dynamic of that and the energy of the group and people supporting each other and colleagues supporting each other, and also like the accountability and the buddy thing is really powerful.
Yeah. And now, are you doing most of these in person, or are you using Zoom, or how do you conduct these?
So great question. Uh, Pre-COVID, everything was in person. So I had
Hmm.
a team that taught in person, predominantly the tri-state area, meaning Connecticut, New Jersey, New York kind of area. But we also did stuff in California and Chicago and Miami and across the country,
Wow.
in person. And
Yeah.
then COVID hit. And that's where you also, going back to your entrepreneur thing, a huge lesson for me, because my whole business was in person, and all of a sudden in March of 2020, I went to zero, right? Super
Yeah.
successful business to zero
Yeah.
because everything was in person. And all of a sudden I had to learn to use every platform, because it wasn't just Zoom. It was Zoom. It was, WebEx. It was Google Meet. It was Teams. And like every company had a different thing, and every company was trying to figure out, how do we continue to do this? And, it was a really incredible learning experience. Not going to say it wasn't painful, but it was, you know, uh, and then other clients were like, well, we want you to create an entire video library for us. And once we have that library, so employees, because they're not in person, they can access it through their intranet, or, our benefits portal. And so please create libraries for us. And so it turned into like a whole other kind of business. And today it's really a hybrid. Like,
Yeah.
it's really, some clients want to go back to in person. So we've done in person sessions. Some clients want a hybrid where I'm actually in a conference room, in an office, and I'm working with the employees. And then there's others that are across the country or international, and they log in virtually. And then there's other clients that still love the virtual aspect. So
Hmm.
now it's really become all three. And it's really up to the client. I don't make that decision. That's up to them. I mean,
Whatever,
of course, I'm
whatever their
not gonna
preference is.
lie. Yeah,
Right.
like I love in person, because in person is human interaction and that energy, but I also respect that I have to meet the client's needs.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. And I think that's another good point about entrepreneurship is the big things happen and you have to adapt. Otherwise you fail, you know? So it's good that you were able to adapt through that. I know a lot of businesses were not able to because of, one thing or another, or just how their business was structured or something. What other kind of technology um, things have you seen over your 15 years in business? I mean, of course, switching from completely in person to virtual to a mix, that's one thing. You mentioned wearables and apps and that sort of thing. Any other technology that you've noticed kind of come up over those 15 years that have either made things better or made things worse?
Well, it's a little bit of what you and I discussed before we got on this, which is the famous AI.
So tell
Um,
me, how does AI fit into your industry, and is it a good
I
thing for your industry or a bad thing?
I think both.
Okay.
I think in a lot of ways it's a good thing, and in a lot of ways it's, for me personally, a bit of a scary, bad thing. Um, the good aspects of it, as a, small business owner, entrepreneur, I think I'm beyond a founder, but let's call that. um, I never know. AI has, in terms of everyday work life, it's a beautiful thing, right? And I fought it for a long time. Trust you me.
Mm,
I was like, oh,
mm,
I don't want to use AI to write my proposals or to my pitches or etc. And now I find it incredibly helpful. Like I taught a group of entrepreneurs, and I had to develop an assessment forum, and I used AI to develop the interactive assessment forum, and it was incredible, right? You
mhm.
still have to prompt it and give it a lot, but like, or I'll go back to like pitches or proposals that I've done years ago, and I'll throw it in there, and I'll be like, modernize it, revamp it, whatever. And so in that sense, it's been really amazing and super helpful and informative. Or if I propose research or stats or things like that, then again, it's really helpful. Where I find it a bit scary, and where you and I slightly talked about it before, is this AI coming into being me, right?
Hmm.
Being
Hmm.
the mental health person or the healer, practitioner, wellness practitioner, and it's not a human being, and now it's AI. And
Yeah.
that scares me a bit in terms of, for a couple of reasons. One, that AI is being prompted by another human to then develop, right? And the information, and now people are walking around saying, oh, I'm getting therapy from AI, or I'm doing wellness exercises because of AI, or AI is telling me about nutrition. And that scares me a little bit because it's still a computer based product, right? And there's still an aspect of health and wellness and mental health that needs to be human based, in my opinion. And also, the other scary part, which touches on what you do, is the cybersecurity of all of it, right? Like, now I've heard people tell their innermost thoughts, feelings, emotions to an AI, and that gets stored somewhere.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
how do we know that's not ever going to be released or leaked to the wrong people, or,
Hmm.
the whole HIPAA compliance thing? And how are we regulating that? And those kind of things in this industry personally scare me. And maybe I'm of a different generation and maybe that comes in too. But I still think there's a value in a human connection when it comes to the kind of work I do versus an AI.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And yeah, and there's actually there's a term now for people that use AI for a therapist. Like they will go on Chat GPT and say like, "Oh, I'm feeling this way or I'm feeling that way." And I think what a lot of people don't realize is all these AI chatbots, the big ones like um, Chat GPT and Claude and uh, all that, they're designed to be very agreeable. So, how many times have you used AI and you type in, "Oh, I need you to, help me create a template uh for this thing," and then it spits one out and you say, actually this one thing that you put in there is wrong, and it'll say, "Oh, you are right. You know what? You're totally right. Let me fix that for you." I wouldn't be surprised. I hope that the developers at these big AI companies are taking this into consideration and putting safeguards in place, but I could see some really dangerous situations where people have they're calling it AI psychosis or something like that, where they're saying, "Oh, here's some texts from my boyfriend, he's totally in the wrong on this, and he's, whatever," and the AI will say, "You're totally right, this guy is messing with you," or whatever. Or I'm afraid somebody's going to put in there, "I'm feeling really depressed and I think I'm going to end my life." And the AI says,
Yeah.
yeah, you know what? Your life does suck. You should end your life. Here's 15 different ways to kill yourself, and I hope that there's safeguards in place for that. But I think it's a real danger, especially when people trust the output from these AI chatbots. And yeah, it's a very effective tool, but I think it's also very dangerous used inappropriately.
Yeah, 100% agree. And even when I was telling you that on the business side of the benefits, that assessment form or other things, it takes me so many rounds of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, right? Because obviously it needs to have Mariposa Wellness voice or my words. And like there's words that the ChatGPT or Claude love that I hate, like they
Yep.
just don't
Yep.
resonate with me, right? And they're not what Mariposa Wellness is about or what I'm about. But again, I agree with you. It's really dangerous especially when I've had friends call me and they're like, "Oh my gosh, have you heard of this amazing startup that is purely AI therapy?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"No, please
Yeah.
stop." You know, for the exact reasons that you're saying, like, how is that AI being programmed? How's that, I guess, AI agent, right, being programmed to give me therapy? Like it's kind of scary to me. But I'm not saying human beings are perfect. We're not,
No,
right? And
no.
and there is human error, and like, jokingly, one of my brothers was driving his Tesla the other day, and he was like, "I'm really tired. I'm going to let the Tesla park for me because of human error." And I was like, get it, like, sure, but he's not sitting there asking the Teslas, you know, like, I'm feeling tired. What should I do? Right?
Yeah,
Just park my
yeah.
car. So, good and bad. But on the emotional well-being side, or the health and wellness or mental health, it does scare me.
Yeah. Well, and you also touched on putting in a bunch of sensitive information. And I think that's another thing people don't realize is like, uh, as far as I'm aware, all the big name AI chatbots that everybody use, none of them are HIPAA compliant. And
Right.
they're all public models. So any information you put in there, those companies use that information to train new models. So if you're and there's actually something in the news just this week. I don't remember the exact details, but a high-ranking government official here in the United States put a bunch of like confidential defense stuff into Chat GPT, and that's a huge breach of national security. And this guy didn't realize, because people don't understand that it's a piece of software running on computers somewhere in a data center, and some of them are secured to a certain extent and some of them aren't. For HIPAA compliance, everything has to be encrypted and separated, and there has to be all sorts of authentication protocols in place that just aren't with a lot of these major models. Uh, and yeah, I think the other problem too is these aren't just traditional pieces of software. The people who are developing these AI models, you can't just look at the code of Claude and go, oh, this is why it responded this way. Oh, this is, if you say this, it's going to say this because it's hard coded that way. It's more of a black box where instead of building and programming these models, it's more like they're growing them, almost like raising a child in a way.
Right. Right.
Uh, and so, you can put safeguards and stuff in place, but without understanding how these AI models are coming to their own conclusions, you can't 100% safeguard terrible things from happening. So
Right.
that,
So
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that's where I think culture needs to shift, where people understand the security risks of using these public models.
Right. So I have a question for you. So if I'm understanding correctly, when an app is built or an AI agent's built, they're building it on top of one of these kind of platforms, right? Like if someone goes out and builds therapy with AI, they're building the AI more than likely on one of these existing platforms, right? Like kind of like AWS gets you build, or is it a different thing? Can you build your own?
Well, so it's very computationally expensive to build your own. So
Okay.
that's why there's a handful of major public models. And most of the time, when you see somebody developing like an AI cell phone app where it's like for example, I interviewed a guy, Rod Price, who has developed an AI app that helps veterans and first responders. It helps them journal and it helps
Mm-hmm.
encourage them to get therapy. So
Okay.
his because I had a similar conversation with him. I was like, hey, like, is your app a therapy app? And he said, no, 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 no. That's very dangerous. He said, my app connects people that need therapy with actual therapists. And I thought that was really cool. But anyway, so his app, he's building this app, and I don't know what model he uses, but most likely it's it's connecting to an API
Right.
of ChatGPT or Claude or something. And then on the front end, there's basically kind of a filter and a set of rules where it's like, okay, we're going to pass this to the public model, but then the results are going to be filtered through this kind of submodel.
Right.
That's not really the right way to describe it, but I hope that makes sense. And you
No, it
can't,
does. Yeah.
yeah, and you can run open source models on your own hardware. So, for example, I know a guy that has his own AI chatbot based on Olama or something that runs on a server in his house, and him and his family can use it just like ChatGPT or Claude, but everything is stored on a computer that he owns. So none of it is going out to the public models. And that's, I do see, like with the HIPAA compliance thing, I do see, if it isn't already happening in the future, hospitals, wellness clinics, healthcare professionals could run their own custom AI models on their own hardware and make them HIPAA compliant that way. You
That
know,
would be
because
really, I mean, that would give me a bigger sense of security and
hmm
a bigger sense of comfort if I knew that that was kind of happening. And,
hmm
on the hospital side, I've spent many, many years working in hospitals. And so I understand all these big systems like Epic and all these things and what it takes in terms of HIPAA compliance. And, I personally have had to sign a lot of documents when I work with patients because I've also done a lot of work with actual patients in the hospital, not just the employees. And, there's all sorts of releases and compliance and things you have to do. And when you're an official vendor of a hospital, I can't even tell you the hell compliance puts you through, and documentation and all of that. And, you know, um, forget just the liability insurance, everything else. And you go through background checks and all these things, which I think is the right thing to do, right? Like all my employees had to go through background checks. We had to use a specific site and system and platform that the hospitals require. Like, and that stuff makes sense to me, right? Because now, whether it's an employee or a patient in the hospital, you're being exposed to very personal things of theirs, right? And a very personal environment. And most of what I teach is not talk therapy, so that's okay. But still, there is emotions and feelings and things that come up, and people may say something, or they may react in a certain way. And I have to be very respectful and careful of that information. And understandably, the hospital doesn't want any of that to go anywhere else, right? So
yeah,
it's so I think what you're saying is super interesting. If there's a way to almost guarantee that HIPAA compliance when it comes to a lot of this AI work with therapy, it would be an interesting safeguard.
yeah, but again, I think there is a way to do it, but it's very um, computationally expensive. And what I mean by that is you would have to spend a lot of money on extra infrastructure just to run that. You would have to have at least one server that had enough power, enough
Right.
computational power to run the model. And then most of these, like, for example, a hospital, if they want to create their own kind of version of an open source model that is trained on medical documentation and stuff, you have to, it's very computationally expensive to train that model too. So you you have to feed it all this information, and then it basically kind of, you let the model think on it basically and study, and it takes hours and hours of running computers at, max load to create an effective model that's trained on the stuff you want it to be trained on. And it's so the cost of building that infrastructure is pretty steep. So for maybe somebody like you, it's not going to be cost effective for you.
No,
Somebody, a big hospital maybe that has a big infrastructure and IT budget, maybe it is feasible. Um,
maybe.
yeah, but
Or maybe
it's
it would be like an interesting add-on to like an Epic or like one of already the hospital systems that exist where all these patients are putting personal information and the
Right.
diagnostics and diagnosis and all of that stuff goes in there. That may be interesting if a company like that said, oh, now we're going to invest in the AI aspect of it. That could be an interesting play. But I agree. If you're a sole practitioner or solopreneur or co-founder, whatever it is, small business, it's not. It would be cost prohibitive, I would imagine.
Yeah, yeah. And that might be a good route too. If those software providers that provide that oh man, what's that called? There's a specific term for it. The software that you use to gather all your patients' information and stuff. It's called like an EDM or EMR, I think. If they were to invest in that and integrate that into their software, that's a good idea. And they could do that and make it HIPAA compliant as long as it was hosted on their infrastructure and, secured properly according to compliance standards.
Yeah, I would imagine it wouldn't be I mean, it would be costly, but not terribly hard because everything they're doing is basically HIPAA compliant already.
Right,
So,
right.
and they're regulated, highly regulated, right? Because if someone, you know, would to break into any of these systems, oh my God, the
Hmm.
information they would get on people, right?
Hmm.
So I would imagine they're highly regulated. There's a lot of compliance that goes in. There's a lot of technology that goes in to protect the information. So I would imagine it would be an interesting play. I mean, not anything I'm
Hmm.
gonna do, but it would be interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and there actually was a data breach a little while ago with United Healthcare, and
Yes.
a lot of personal information got leaked, even though they're really strict about their stuff. I'm sure they have to be HIPAA compliant and probably are beheld to other compliance standards as well. Um, Unfortunately, nothing is bulletproof. Um, there's always that human aspect of it. Like recently, I was talking to a school district about we're working on installing an access control system at their schools, which is, like card readers to unlock their doors and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
And I had a conversation with the superintendent and I said, hey, like, it's all great that you want to invest in this system and this will help keep you more secure, but it's only as secure as the training you give your staff. So there's so many ways to slip past or bypass this system. If you have a staff member that's coming in, a really common tactic is called tailgating, where if you walk up and you tap your badge and unlock the door and open it, and somebody says, hey, can you hold the door for me real quick?
Right.
Maybe they're carrying something, you know, your human empathy kicks in and says, oh, yeah, no problem. I'll be nice and open the door for you. But if that person doesn't have access or shouldn't have access, then they gain access when they shouldn't. And so that's where the human training comes in. You can have the best tools and the most secure equipment out there, but yeah, I mean there was a Twitter hack a few years ago where Twitter is very secure, but these kids made some phone calls to Twitter support and were able to convince them that they were somebody else and that they were able to gain access to a lot of people's information, through phone calls and sounding really convincing.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up this human aspect. Um, if we could slightly shift, because I get a lot of stressed out parents and employees
Hmm.
that are like, AI is going to take every possible job that my teenager could get in God knows how many years. Or I get younger employees that are like, AI is going to take my job. I'm never going to have a job again. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, let's take a step back and let's take a breath for a moment and let's take a step back, right? And what is it that we're really saying, right? And my response to everybody, both the parents and younger workforce, is AI is here. It's here to stay. So how are you going to collaborate and how are you going to cohabitate with it, right? And I love that you brought up that human aspect to the superintendent, right? And it's like AI may be supporting security,
Hmm.
right? Meaning like if you implement this or technology, sorry, like your, security technology, right? So it may take away and maybe you may need less human security, but you still need the human aspect of training everyone
Hmm.
and getting everyone physically and mentally prepared to utilize the security technology in the best manner possible.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's a great example, thank you for bringing it up, of like both sides of it, right?
Hmm.
Like, and how you cohabitate and collaborate with both sides of it. And it also goes back to what we were saying, like, I still have to feed the AI my information, my techniques, my toolbox, my thought process, right? Because if I just shoot off whatever the AI is saying, it's not what I believe, right? It's not what I do. So I think it is important that to remember in all this technology, there needs to be both sides of it. There still needs to be a human aspect. And you can look at technology advancements and security and cybersecurity and AI, but let's not freak out and say it's going to take away every human being.
Yeah. Well, but also I think there is a little bit of truth in the like, oh no, AI is going to take our jobs, and I see it in our industry in IT. The recommendation for somebody who wanted to get into IT or cybersecurity was go out and get yourself a tier one help desk job, and that's literally somebody who sits on the phone, for support. You call them, they say, oh yeah, let me see what I can do, and then work your way up to more of the mid and senior level positions. Now, a lot of businesses that do, software businesses that have support or IT businesses that provide IT support like ours, they're replacing those tier one help desk positions with AI chatbots. And on one hand, it's cheaper for me to implement an AI chatbot than to hire somebody to do that work. But you like how many times have you had to talk to support and it's a chatbot and you just get super frustrated? You're just like, I want to talk to a person because a person is going to understand what I am trying to tell them,
Yes.
and help me a whole lot faster. That's like just recently I had a problem. I recorded a podcast episode here on Riverside, and Riverside is excellent software. But I had a problem with one episode that was processing for like a week, and usually it only takes a couple minutes.
Right.
And so I tried to get a hold of support, and I went to their support page, and it was an AI chatbot, and it was trying to recommend me these different articles that didn't have anything that was helpful in them for my personal situation. And I finally found a way to email support. And as soon as I sent that email from support, it was like 20 or 30 minutes later, I got an email back. Oh, yep, I see the problem. I fixed it. You should be good to go. And, it should have just been that easy. But instead, I had to spend an hour sifting through their website trying to find how to contact a real person. So I think it's also, there is a little bit of truth of that AI taking some jobs, because now I can't necessarily recommend that you go get a tier one help desk job to new people anymore. But then the more mid level positions, they're not going to hire you without experience. So how do you get experience? But I think that falls on business owners to push back against that idea and that culture a little bit. So we don't have any AI chatbots for our support. It's all real people. Um, but enough people have to do it for it to make a difference.
Of course, but I also think there are in like everything in life, there's like sort of happy mediums, right?
Hmm.
Like, you know, I had a similar situation with something that was happening with my Macintosh, like my laptop, and I tried to go through the AI service of Mac of what they were like, try this and that, and like a bazillion articles, and I was like, not helping me, and so I, made a Genius appointment. and went to the Apple store, and literally in like 10 minutes, they were like, here you go. And I was like, thank God. Like,
Hmm.
I only wasted 10 minutes on trying to do it, but I agree. Like, it gets really frustrating when you're like, I just need a human being.
Hmm.
Like, I just need to talk to someone for 5 minutes, and then this is going to be fixed. So you're right. Like, companies need to find that happy medium. If it's like, if you want to just like, I think some of the airlines do it a little bit better, where it's like you go on to like the chat box of the airline and they ask you like a series questions, like, do you need to change your flight, do you need to da da da, and then when you're like, I need an agent, they put you to someone.
Yeah.
So I understand that sort of happy medium where like you may not want to take someone's time to ask, Brad, are you changing your flight, are you doing this, are you doing, once, if the agent gets that information, then they're like maybe 5 minutes ahead of the game, right? And
Yeah.
so I get that. And by the way, if we bring it full circle to like a wellness practitioner, it does help with the stress levels, right?
Yeah.
On both sides. So
Yeah.
like I've done a lot of work with call centers where I've worked with the stress level of call centers, especially like a hospital call center where they're like, oh my God, like the amount of yelling we get from people and understandably, right? Like
Yeah.
insurance and appointments and it's like it's craziness, right? And so I've done a lot of work with the call centers on giving them toolboxes to say, how do you deal with those difficult people on the other side? How do you not let it impact you? How does it not turn into a screaming fight on both sides, right?
Yeah.
And so I do think there's an element of like, well, if I can actually just speak to a person for 5 minutes, maybe I won't yell so much. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so like I think as a wellness person, I always try to bring the business element and the wellness element together. Like that's definitely one of my special sauce or secret sauce, which I just gave up to everybody. But um I really believe in recognizing business aspects and wellness aspects. So like that assessment form I was telling you about, it was basically like I had a group of founders fill it out. I never read it, by the way, but it was just for them to sit down, take 5 to 10 minutes, and really understand how they physically and emotionally react to conversations,
Hmm.
to maybe friction, a pitch, a sales thing, or a difficult conversation they may have to have with an employee as a founder or co-founder, right? And I wanted them to take a moment, because we don't do that enough for ourselves, right? And go through that assessment and say, like, does my heart race? Do I speak faster? Do I look away? Do I look down? Like what? And I gave them a whole, like, it was a multiple choice kind of thing, and then they could write at the end. But it was really like, take a moment and think about how this is impacting you and what you can do that allows you to feel better so that you actually communicate better
Hmm. Hmm.
and don't like just react and rush through that, but take a moment. And as I said to him, I was like, keep this around. And every so often, maybe touch base with it and be like, okay, I'm about to do a huge presentation, or I'm about to do a big pitch, or I'm about to have a difficult conversation with an employee. Like, how am I going to react? Right? How
Hmm.
am I going to
Hmm.
respond? Like, what am I going to do? What am I doing for myself? And then move forward.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's interesting, like, going back to your example of the airlines and how they have that questionnaire coming up. I wonder if that works in some situations, but maybe not as much in healthcare and wellness. I
No.
talked to a guy named Seely Hambright, and he owns a wellness clinic in Colorado. And he had mentioned that when they first opened the clinic, it was like that. You would walk in and there was like an iPad and you'd fill out a questionnaire to check in and all that sort of stuff. And then they switched to having an actual front desk person, and their customer satisfaction increased. So there, like, I think there is a time and a place for those sort of things, but a computer is never going to be able to empathize correctly with a human being, and a computer doesn't have a bedside manner.
No. And that's we go back to why a lot of this scares me. And thank you for bringing up the word bedside manner or empathy, right? Those are big words in my world of empathy,
Hmm.
right? And awareness and acknowledgement, right? I always say when I train other instructors or practitioners, it's you have to have an awareness of who's in front of you, right? And even if you're a call center or a reception or a doctor, a nurse, or another practitioner, have an awareness of who's in front of you. Like, take a moment, right? Because not all the language is the same, and language is really powerful. But you're right. Like, if you are upset or not feeling well or stressed, or you're walking into a wellness clinic to feel better, how great is it if, like, you come across a human being that just says, "Good morning, Brad. Hi."
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that with a smile, all of a sudden your energy reacts to that, right? But like if you walk into wellness and they're like, go to that screen and press all the buttons, and you're like, oh, on top of this, like I'm already tired and I would just want like, a moment of it. And I gotta figure out this computer thing. And how many times have we all walked into doctor's offices and the iPad doesn't work?
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
trying to fill it out. And like, you're like, oh my God. Or they give you like a bazillion papers that you have to like sign your life away to, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, you're right. It makes a huge difference if the person handing you the bazillion papers is like, hey, I'm sorry. I know this may be a bit cumbersome or long to fill out, but, and if you don't finish it, you can continue it in the, exam room or whatever. Or if they're giving you a release form at a wellness center and they say, please sign this, and this is for your benefit as well as the clinics, those little details, right? And human interaction make all the difference.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And having that, yeah, that basic human courtesy,
Right.
and the empathy, understanding that, this these people that you're interacting with, they have their own perspectives, they have their own things that they're dealing with, and a computer just can't do that.
No. And I think that's where also I go back to, like, I get that we have to cohabitate, collaborate with technology. Like,
Yeah.
that's where we are. And, certain decisions get made too. Like, the amount of people that I've had say to me, why don't you have an app? Why don't you have a platform? Why don't you have an app? Where's your AI agent? And I fight that all the time because I don't think it's true to who I am. It doesn't
Hmm.
fit my
Hmm.
values. It was hard enough for me to accept teaching everything virtually, which I miss the human, right? But I keep saying to people, like, I can create a video library that someone else can upload to their benefits and all of that. That's great and valuable. I get it. And I did a lot of work of that through COVID too, where because especially in hospitals, I knew that people couldn't even log into a live session, right? They needed to be able to tap into something immediate when they had a break. And so, I created things in 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes for them to do. And I'm really grateful that I had that opportunity to support first responders in that way. And that makes me really happy. But I don't believe in the work I do. I don't want it to be an app for me.
Hmm. Hmm.
Or, and I respect that other people do, and that's fine. But I still want it to be a human
Hmm. Hmm.
interaction.
Yeah. Well, and uh, I'm the same way. And it was kind of interesting when my wife and I were first dating. You know, I didn't have any personal social media, and she thought that was weird. And she's like, "But you're a tech guy," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's why I don't have any social media." And I told her, I was like, "And just so you know, like, we're never gonna have an Amazon Alexa in our house. We're never gonna have, Google Dot in our house. You know, all this stuff." And I've been able to explain it to her now, and she understands and agrees. But without the without the understanding, um, or just the experience too. I mean, there's a lot of kids now that have grown up with cell phones and apps, and they don't remember what it was like to, you know, you would wake up in the morning on the weekend, go hop on your bike and ride to the park and, hang out with your buddies and whatever, feed squirrels or play tag or whatever. Now it's all online and they don't know any better, but I would argue that face-to-face human interaction is way more important than I think our current society um, puts emphasis on.
I 100% couldn't agree more, especially because of the work I do.
Hmm.
And, another angle of the work I do is a lot of multi-generational workforce communication because, and I love to say this, it's really fun to make fun of Gen Zs.
Yeah.
Not super helpful, but fun, Brad.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
not helpful. And I've done a bunch of lunch and learns and interactive activities with Gen Z, millennials, Gen Xers and boomers, because really we do have all those some people say we have, you know, even more, but let's focus on those four in the workforce, right? And
Hmm.
there's a lot of this that happens, right, with that. But interesting in some of the studies that in order to do this work that I've researched, a lot of the Gen Zs are the most suspicious
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
AI and the most suspicious of all of it and the least likely to use it the way maybe
Mm.
a Gen Xer is like, woo, I can use all this now, right? I figured it out. I feel really modern and hip and cool, right? The Gen Zer is like, maybe not. Maybe
Yeah.
it's suspicious of it, and it's an interesting dynamic, right? When it comes to that, I do think you're 100% right that we need a bigger push in this country to go back to human interaction and being outside and being with your friends and running around and I'm very proud of a lot of my friends and family that are very limiting in their children's technology use and are
Hmm.
very
Hmm.
strict about it. um and I love that, for instance, there's a lot of high schools in the United States that you can't use your phone during school anymore. And I think it's really important. We go back to cyberbullying and all that stuff. And, I think it's really smart. I think we have to limit it. It's too dangerous with all the fake news out there and the AI producing images and all of that. And these are developing minds. And
Hmm.
we definitely and again, I go back to my health and wellness hat, it's too stressful for these kids and it's too much, right? Let them
Hmm.
scrape their knee outside. They don't need to be bullied on Instagram. It's
Yeah.
okay. You can scrape your knee. You can come back from that.
Yeah.
Being bullied on Instagram, it's tough to come back from.
Definitely. Definitely. Well, and I don't want to go too deep into this rabbit hole, but I have a feeling that, um, in my opinion, a lot of this technology and stuff has made people soft because they don't go out and scrape their knees anymore. And
Yes.
scraping your knee, that's not that big a deal. When you're a kid, it's like, oh no, I hurt myself. Like, for example, one of my kids, for the first time, we weren't paying attention. There was a razor blade in the kitchen on the counter, something I had used and then left it on the counter. And she had climbed up there and was like, ooh, what's this? And grabbed the razor blade and cut her finger. And it was like, because she had never had that happen before. It was like the end of the world. And I was like, no, no, it's okay. Let's clean this. Okay, we'll put a Band-Aid on there. And then, 10 minutes later, she was fine. She's like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. And it's like, yeah, but, um, and I'm sure she's going to get hurt plenty more growing up, scraping her knee, falling out of trees, whatever. Hopefully not seriously hurt, but
But hopefully not.
yeah, yeah. But we're very strict with, uh, our kids aren't allowed to have their own technology right now. They're not allowed to play on our phones either. Um, if we watch something on the TV or something together, then my wife and I are the ones that control, what's
Right.
being watched and all that. But there's a lot of people that have kids same age as mine that just hand them a tablet and give them free reign over it too. You can watch whatever you want, just go for it because it pacifies them, which is, um, I wonder too, and maybe you have some experience with this. I wonder if this is contributing to a lot of the mental health issues that we see with younger folks.
100%. 100%. I I've watched it um with kids as they've grown up and the impact that it's had on their central nervous system, literally on their physical being.
Hmm.
And um you know, it's like a silly example, but like there are certain I was watching my 3-year-old, almost 3-year-old in April, nephew, and like there's certain shows that make him more hyper than others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's a brain reaction, right? And there's certain shows that calm him down, right?
Yeah.
And that's also, you can scientifically measure those things, right? Like the brain reaction, the brain waves, their anxiety, their central nervous system, how they respond, do they jump up and down? Like there's a lot of things that you can look at from a scientific medical perspective on reactions to that image in front of them, right? And so yeah, your point is really valid. It should be controlled by the parents or the adult in the room to say, okay, this is going to have a certain impact, right? And to also bring it full circle, I never understood this till I got older, but I had a very practical mom. And I think one of the reasons I do what I do is because of her. Um, One, because she said she was doing yoga when she was pregnant with me, and she thinks that my obsession comes from that moment. And I was like, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could make sense. Um, but the other thing that she always said to us when we were kids, and we would, fight with each other or have a rough moment, or like even in college and whatever, her response always when we called her was, have you gone outside? Have you done any activity? And I was like, what? And when you're a little kid, what do you mean? She's like, go outside, go run around,
Mm-hmm.
do something physical, come back and call me again.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, she was in an office and she was working as an attorney, but today it makes so much sense. She was like, go let it out, right? Release it. Sit down for a second after you physically released it, and then we'll talk about it. And clearly it's a core of what I teach, right? And so I definitely credit my childhood and upbringing to a mom that was always very practical, that was like, I respect your emotional reaction to this, but like I need you to release that energy and then come talk to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a big educational point for people. It's like, no one's negating your pain and no one's negating your emotional reaction. But and the base and the mission statement of Mariposa Wellness is what's in your toolbox, right? Make it simple, accessible, and easy that will help with daily life challenges in small amounts, right? 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 minutes. So like, as opposed to handing your kid a technology to distract them or, get them to focus on something else, maybe you have them do some manual building blocks or, my nephew lives for magnet tiles, and I actually am now addicted to magnet tiles, Brad, and I find them really mentally soothing. Like
They're fun.
they're amazing. It's like a
Yeah.
whole therapy, right? Like they're
Yeah.
colorful and you can build different things. And that's a moment of what I try to teach with Mariposa Wellness. And my mission is like, it's a moment for yourself to pause and to like focus your mind, but it's not a technology, right? It's an actual manual experience
Mm-hmm.
that you're focusing on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I would love people to do more of that. Obviously, it's why I created Mariposa Wellness, but and also with kids. I've done a lot of work with kids and teaching really fun yoga to kids, and I do like animal sounds and animal poses and all that stuff. And again, it goes back to that, like, you know, make a noise like a lion and you're
Yeah.
releasing it,
Yeah.
and it's fun.
Yeah.
So I wish we did more of that. more of that education at a younger age and not letting people reach adults and be like, wait, what? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's on the parents. I mean, parents need to step up and realize that and then act on it. Um, that's how it is. I don't know how we necessarily accomplish that wide scale, but that's what it is. So
I don't know. I'm trying to accomplish it one step at a time.
good,
But
good. So let me ask you real quick. We're running up on time, but I want to know: do you think overall AI is going to be a boon for humanity, or do you think it will end us all?
oh wow, that's a really big question. Um, I, I'm more of an optimist. Let's hope it
Okay.
doesn't end us all.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think it's going to end us all. I think goes back to what I was saying, and I try to have these conversations with, but young employees, parents, founders, small business owners, entrepreneurs. Um, listen, it's here. So
Hmm.
how are we going to collaborate? How are we going to cohabitate with it? How are we going to work to put on certain guardrails and certain limitations and use cybersecurity and IT professionals like you and respect what you're saying about it and what needs to be done and how do we get that regulation done, I think is important. I don't think it's going to end humanity, but I do think we need to pay attention to the regulatory aspects. When it comes to the work that I do, I can mostly speak to what I do. I can't really. Um, so I would just like to see that happen, but I don't think we're going to, stop the AI train at this
No.
point, or the technology train, right? So how do we support humanity still in the best, most healthiest way with how fast technology is going?
Yeah. Yeah. And so what's one last thing or one last chunk of knowledge you want to leave with our listeners?
Oh my God, Brad, all these big questions right at the end.
That's how I like to do it.
um, okay, well, one of my favorite pieces of advice that we slightly touched upon for small business owners, entrepreneurs, founders, or even corporate executives, don't be afraid to pivot. It's okay. You can pivot. You can make a mistake. You can pivot again. It's
Mhm.
okay. It happens to the best of us. Um, respect that. Allow the space for that. And, don't torture yourself on that. Don't over criticize yourself. It's okay. Pivots happen and they're actually good. Um, and, the other thing is, please, create that toolbox for yourself. It's simple, easy, and accessible. Find little things to support you throughout the day, whether it's getting up and doing a quick stretch or taking 10 breaths or listening to your favorite piece of music or going outside, as Brad was saying, and like walking around and then coming back to your desk. But like, think about that for yourself. There's these little things you can do that support you. And whether you're, an IT professional, a marketing professional, startup founder, practitioner, whatever it is, think about those little things you can do for yourself. Drink, take a few. There's people I always say drink more water so it gets you up from your desk to go to the bathroom, and it's not really about that. It's about the walk and getting you
Mhm.
away from your desk.
Mhm.
Um, so if I could part with everybody is just think about what you can put in that toolbox for yourself to help you deal with daily life challenges that is easy, accessible, and simple, and do it for yourself because it's gonna make life better. And
Mhm.
it's gonna help you support your business or support your loved ones or support yourself.
Mhm. I like that. I like that. Thank you. And where can people find you?
So they can find me on LinkedIn, Karina Muller on LinkedIn. They can find me at mariposawellness.com, the website. There's an info at Mariposa Wellness. You can email me if you have any questions or comments. I'm happy to be in touch or answer. So I would say those are probably the two best places.
Very cool. Well, thank you again, Karina, for joining us. And for all those listening, you can find this podcast on YouTube and Spotify, and we'll see you in the next one.
Great. Thank you so much, Brad. This was really fun. Thank you.